We've got some 2600 megahertz ADATA RAM in the house, and it has like a really nice shield on it. I'm usually not a nerd for aesthetics, but this one's sleek and minimal, and I like it, but who cares? It's fast. Now, a lot of people out there have been yelling and screaming about people that recommend high-speed RAM. And I want to tell you guys, always get good RAM. If you get high-speed RAM and you don't want to run it at the highest speeds, you can always lower it and then lower the cache latency and get some benefit right there. But that's not what we're going to talk about right now. The first thing I want to talk about is how freaking fast this is with the 6800K. That's the Richland APU-based system. And we've got this motherboard here from Asus. It's the F2A85-M Pro. It's a micro ATX motherboard. So we put this RAM in there, and I wanted to test to see how much faster the games actually were at two different frequencies, 1600 and 2400. Why not 26? Well, we tried 26 for a while, but we had to overclock the system to get it to run correctly, and I ran into a few stability issues. So for the sake of this video, we're doing it at 2400 and 1600.
But we had more aggressive timings on 2400 because the RAM could hit 2600, so we could make it up with more aggressive timings.
Exactly, and you guys can get all of the information as far as like the system that we used, the RAM that we used, the hard drive that we used, the timings that we used, all on the website. We're making all that stuff available to you, including the full report from Fraps with the frame times and everything, so you guys can see what's up. Thing is that if you're using a dedicated graphics card like this, the dedicated onboard memory, well, I guess it wouldn't be dedicated, but the onboard memory, or the system memory, it really doesn't matter all that much for gameplay because you've got GDDR5 built right into your graphics card, and it's using that memory. But with an APU, well, it really needs fast memory because that's the memory for the graphics. And that's where you're going to get all your textures from and everything else. So
we got it up to almost 21 gigabytes per second in ADA64, which is crazy for an APU platform.
Yeah.
I mean, the thing's only got 4 megs of L2 cache.
So let's go ahead and do our benchmarks, and then we'll come back and talk nerdy for a minute. You guys like it when we talk nerdy to you, don't you? All right, so I benchmarked a variety of different games and a variety of different genres, and I benchmarked most of them at 720p, but I'll note if I benchmarked them otherwise, like Black Mesa Source. Now, this is a good spot if you're someone who's building the kill your console PC and you're just getting over to the PC. A really good place to start would be Black Mesa Source, because that is Half-Life 1 redone with better graphics. It's using the new Source engine, and it looks amazing. We ran this at 1080p with everything on high and full HDR. 1600 megahertz RAM with that one, the exact same benchmark, 63.52 frames per second. I had to clarify the exact same benchmark because some people were like, oh, with one you were just looking at a corner and with the other one you were looking at a helicopter. Like, no, they're exactly the same benchmarks, as exact as they possibly can be. Maybe a 1% or less margin of error. 2400 megahertz memory, 75.28. So 63.52 all the way up to 75.28 just by using faster RAM. Civilization 5, running at 1600 by 900. Even had 2x MSAA turned on, and the textures, I'm putting the everything on the screen, all the information, running in medium and high for all the different settings. Now 1600 megahertz RAM, 26.68 frames per second. With the 2400 megahertz RAM, 40.32 frames per second. You know, a lot of people don't think that Civilization 5 really matters all that much, but it does feel pretty choppy when you're moving around the map at anything under 30 frames per second. But keeping it above 30 almost all the time was really nice with the 2400 megahertz RAM. Metro Last Light can barely play on this APU, but I really wanted to stress it out, so I chose Metro Last Light. We're running it at DirectX 10, only running at 720p on all low settings, but we are using 4x aniscopic filtering. 1600 megahertz RAM, 27 frames per second, and that stayed under 30 almost the entire time, like a lot of the time. 24 megahertz RAM, 33.56 frames per second. Actually playable unless there's about 10 people shooting and explosions happening at the same time, then it starts to stutter a little bit. Primal Carnage running at 720p, high detail, 8x aniscopic filtering, low textures, and ambient occlusion turned off. 1600 megahertz RAM, 38.32 frames per second. It kind of worries me because that game can get kind of hectic, and if you're running at 38.32, you get a lot of junk going on the screen. You may actually drop below 30 here and there, and that little bit of a stutter could get you killed. So we want 2400 megahertz RAM, because with 2400 megahertz RAM, we got 51.04 frames per second. And it was very hard to drop it below 30 with the 2400 megahertz RAM, and that makes me very happy. Last game that I benchmarked was Trine 2, running at 720p. I was actually running full scene anti-aliasing, and the graphics were set to very high. 1600 megahertz RAM, 39.36 frames per second. 2400 megahertz RAM, 50.24 frames per second. Very nice and fluid and smooth. And running Trine 2, you may actually want to turn it up to 1600 by 900. You can still get a decent frame rate with 2400 megahertz RAM running at 1600 by 900. But it all depends on your display and how you like to play. So that's what we did for the benchmarks, and I was freaking impressed. So now we're going to get nerdy a little bit and talk about what we did in the UEFI with the Asus F2A85-M Pro motherboard, because you can tweak it even farther. We can even go farther than what we got. You can get better results with the same RAM.
Yes.
But, for the video, I just did it like as quickly and fast as possible, because a lot of people are just going to just do it that way and not know that they can actually sit there and tweak and tinker around and get better performance. So Wendell,
we got to you got to understand, this particular Asus board has got this feature that can read the Intel XMP profiles from the RAM chips.
Let me stop you right there and just say what the XMP profiles are, in case you're someone who's brand new, you do not know what XMP profiles are. If you have an Intel platform and you get some RAM like this, on the RAM itself,
when you put it in, it runs at 1333, unless you do stuff.
Yeah, and almost always it runs very slow at 1333. But on board, there are profiles that the Intel UEFI or the BIOS can look at and be like, oh, let me load up these RAM profiles, and all of a sudden your RAM is now 2400 megahertz or 2600 megahertz or whatever. Well, those are specific to Intel usually. Now, there's equivalents on the AMD platform, but a lot of times the RAM vendors do not take advantage of the AMD equivalents, and so you're stuck with the XMP profiles that most AMD motherboards cannot read. But a lot of them are putting in features like Asus here with this motherboard. So go ahead, Wendell.
On the Asus board, it's called like the DOCP profile. And so we set that, and it was able to read in the XMP profile and set up the corresponding timings in the DRAM timing. Now, it wasn't exactly a one-to-one relationship. It just sort of takes a stab at it. So it's not perfect every time, because we tested with a bunch of different RAM and a bunch of different scenarios. And so we actually tweaked it a little bit and got a little bit better performance. Now, this is 2600 megahertz RAM. The platform will only go up to 2400, but
without an overclock.
But we were able to make the timings a little more aggressive. Like where the DOCP read in, I think it was like 11, 13, 13, 35. We were able to lower that to like 10, 11, 11, 32.
This is off the top of your head, but
yeah.
You can check out the ADA report, but it's a little more aggressive than it should be.
Go to the website and look at the actual numbers. And so we were able to bump up from about 18 or 19 gigabytes per second to a solid 20 gigabytes per second. And then we tweaked it a little bit more, and we're able to get it up to 21 gigabytes per second, which for an APU platform is really fast.
Yeah, it can be really, really handy. The other thing I want to note is, by default, 512 megabytes of your memory is allocated specifically for the RAM. And
the graphics RAM.
Your graphics RAM, your dedicated graphics RAM. Now, if you want to go in and allocate more dedicated memory, so let's say you're running 16 gigabytes of memory, and I do want to note that even if it's only got 512 megabytes of dedicated memory, it still shares memory with the system. So,
and that's
as long as there's memory available, it'll go over 512. You need to go into the Northbridge configuration and change your settings there. You'll see.
We've got screenshots and B-roll of that somewhere.
Yeah, it's on the screen now, so just watch what we're doing. But I forgot the exact setting, but you need to go. It's kind of weird because you're like, where should I go? And my brain thought, oh, let's go to CPU configuration because it'll be there. It's on the die, right?
These are things you need to look for when you're picking your APU platform. And Richland is an excellent platform for replacing your console at a comparable dollar amount.
Yeah, and if you're looking to cheap out, you can get a cheaper motherboard, but you'll lose some of the features and possibly some of the overclocking ability. There's even better boards if you want to spend more money to get even more of an overclock. But typically, if you have more money to spend, I'll recommend going with a dedicated graphics card and maybe a different system altogether. So.
And Richland is currently the world record holder. They hit 8.2 gigahertz. No, 8.0. I think 8.0 or 8.2. Yeah, over 8 gigahertz.
With all cores.
With all 4 cores turned on, and it was stable. Now, of course, it was liquid nitrogen cooling.
Yeah.
But still, that's an incredible show of promise for this platform.
One other thing that's interesting about the Richland, it doesn't have quite the memory bandwidth of some of the more beastly Intel platforms, but with some of the modern games, the ones that really take advantage of the graphics card, if you had a dedicated graphics card, let's say you had like this is a 760 or even a 780 or even a 7970 or an 8970 that's coming out very soon, or just a new graphics card, let's say like a year down the road you add a graphics card, the speed that you get out of this quad-core CPU with the combined graphics card it's not that much different than the top of the line Haswell parts. They're like $300. And I know all the Intel guys are like doing this right now, but it's true that in games, some games, a lot of the newer games, like especially like, well, BioShock is one that I can say because we've done that test and we saw that it was very similar in speed because it relies so heavily on the GPU. Put your money where the GPU is first when you're upgrading, and then see how everything runs. And if you think you need a new CPU, then you can go get a new CPU afterwards.
Yeah, in that video, we've got actually the Asus GTX 780 DirectCU 2 on the Richland platform, and that is pretty scrappy. I mean, nobody's going to be crazy enough to get a 780 for a Richland, but it's surprising that Richland is able to hold its own.
Well, it just shows you, with GPU-heavy applications, the GPU matters most. So spending a gazillion dollars on a CPU just to game kind of makes my head hurt.
Yeah.
If you're going to be doing rendering and productivity and stuff like that, then yeah, then we can talk about a $300 or $400 or $500 CPU or $600 plus CPU. But just for gaming, really, guys, put your money where the GPU is. But we got a lot of videos coming up to back up all this nonsense that we're spouting right now. We're even going to put this up against an i7 920. So all those videos are coming very soon. There's a lot of verses. There was a lot of battling, and we're not just battling, all the new stuff. We're going to put the new stuff up against the old stuff with the same graphics hardware.
And if it wasn't interesting, we wouldn't put it up.
Yeah.
So you've got something to look forward to.
Man, the guys on Reddit are going to be yelling and screaming, and then all the Intel fanboys and AMD fanboys are going to fight with pitchforks. I love starting trouble like this because it's fun to watch all you guys freak out as if this is more important than the other things that are going on in the world. So, yeah. Anyway, get good RAM, get a good system, kill your console, and subscribe. See you next time.